This is the Harmonic Motion Podcast, a place where you, dear listener, can join with automotive aftermarket professionals as they delve into and discuss the matters which matter.
Welcome to this episode of the Harmonic Motion Podcast. I'm delighted to welcome three top techs, people high in their field for repairing, diagnosing and fixing broken problems. And this episode is proving hopefully to be very juicy in diving into some of the nitty-gritty of diagnostics from the sharp end. So on the episode, we've got John Shuttleworth, Mark Roberts and Simon Parkinson. As I say, all top men in their own field. And I'm delighted, first of all, to introduce, or to get the guys to introduce themselves for you that don't know them, to have a bit of their understanding of their background. So, John, if you could share with us a bit of your background.
Sure, yeah, thank you, James. So my name's John Shuttleworth. I've been in the motor trade for approximately 30 years now. I started on coaches as my apprenticeship. Then I worked at Saab in New York for about 3 or 4 years. And then I progressed to Ford, worked at a Ford main agent. And then I moved to an independent for about 4 years, doing all makes, all models. I thought that was a pretty good tech till I went to an independent and realised that I had my blinkers on. I didn't really know a lot about the other vehicles that were out there. So it was really quite an interesting period of my development. I was at the independent for a while, and then the place where I currently am, Highfield Garage, which is in a small village near Selby. I was given the opportunity to have a go myself, and I kind of dove in and took the bull by the horn, so to speak. And I've been here for 15 years now. I've got 2 lads working for me. One lad's 4 years in, he's qualified. Another apprentice is 6 months in. He's starting college in September. The lad that's trained is doing MOTs in August. He's going to become an MOT tester. 15 years I've been here. Did a lot of things wrong at the start, not with regards to fixing the cars. I was always really able to fix the cars. But like a lot of business owners in the motor trade, I was a mechanic with a business, and I had no idea really what I was doing with the business. I was also struggling as the cars became more technically challenging. So I was the original parts swapper, if you like, with a bent copy of Autodata and a snap-on scanner. Away I went, and I realised that this wasn't the way forward. I wasn't diagnosing cars properly. Customers were getting frustrated because I was putting parts on the cars and not being able to fix them. So I realised, and I was unhappy at work because I couldn't do my job correctly. I could do the mechanical side of things fine. So about 6 years ago, I decided I need to retrain, and came across Steve Scott on the internet, buggering around with a WPS, and I thought, oh, this guy's a bit interesting, and it really all stemmed from there. Discovered James at Technical Topics, and all the other fantastic trainers in the industry, and signed myself up for the diagnostic technician program, where I met Simon and Mark and James and the team, obviously. Proceeded through that, really enjoyed it, learned a lot, and then the next sort of natural progression sort of step would be Master Tech. And I kind of thought to myself, maybe I haven't got the minerals to do this, but I had to go anyway. And a couple of the other guys were a bit reluctant, and I was like, well, I'm going to do it, guys. So it's up to you if you want to jump on board and have a go. And fortunately, Mark and Simon did, and we've established good friendship, and I'm now I'd like to think I'm pretty successful at what I do. We do all makes, all models, and there's not many cars that we don't fix. The only limitations to us fixing cars really are the customer not wanting to pay the money, or the equipment that we may not have for programming, for example, that we sometimes have to outsource. But yeah, I've been on a fantastic journey. Countless hours of YouTube and reading and learning, and yeah, really kind of got the growth mindset now. Met loads of really cool people in the trade who I can now, I think I can call friends, and all the knowledge and the experience that I've gained, I come back to the workshop and I'm teaching it to these two young lads, and watching them learn and grow and develop is really quite inspiring, and yeah, fix a lot of cars with just basic electrical knowledge. Not really. I can do some advanced stuff, but I'm not on the same level as a lot of other guys. But yeah, a lot of cars, basic electrical. It's just like understanding how to read a wiring diagram, having an expected result, and yeah, developing test plans. Just really love getting involved in diag, and yeah, that's kind of me and my background really.
Awesome. Yeah, no, thanks for that, John. Do you want to give a shout out to the boys in case they're listening? What are the lads you got? What are their names?
So we've got Joshua, who's Joshua Isle. He's the 4 years in guy. He's an awesome tech. His mechanical and his electrical is amazing. I mean, the lad is just, I think it's kind of infectious, the attitude that I've got towards it now. And he's just a joy to be around. He's well paid. He's punctual. He just wants to learn. And then Lewis Wilson, he's just come in about 6 months ago, and he's getting to grips with the motor trade and doing really well. And yeah, they're both good lads. And I'm trying to encourage young people to come into the trade, and you know, it's a good job. It's a difficult job. It can be challenging, but it's highly rewarding, especially when you fix something that has been to 2 or 3 other garages and they can't do it. And then obviously the customers are overjoyed. Sometimes they're at the end of the tether because they've basically got this car that's worth X amount of pounds and no one can seem to fix it. And yeah, we managed to do that with quite a high success rate. And we get a lot of repeat business off the back of it. A lot of people will say, oh, there aren't any auto electricians out there anymore who can fix cars. They're just mechanics. But the people that I associate myself with, I mean, I know there's some really clever people out there and some really good independent and dealer techs. So yeah, it's been awesome. And yeah, I love diag, and I find it very interesting.
Yeah, no, good stuff. No, awesome. Thanks for that, John. Thanks for the intro. And I'm sure we'll cover more as we go through, but that gives us a really good idea of what you've built there, what you've been up to, the journey that you've been on, which is pretty awesome. And, you know, we have to say you've done that, again, with some challenging personal circumstances, and testament have to go to your determination, grit to see that through. And, you know, you yourself are inspiring to others. So it's not all about you being inspired. You definitely inspired others, inspired me with your, you know, with the way that you've taken those challenges on. So yeah, top man. Yeah, top man.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Cool stuff. Cool. Right, Mark.
So my name's Mark Roberts. Run a small independent workshop in Cardiff. Been here for the last 8 years. A&J Autos. Been in the trade, same as John, roughly about 30 years. Started off in Saab back in 1995. Did my apprenticeship with them. Always had a massive love of diagnostics rather than swinging spanners. I just find it, there's no joy in it for me anymore. Diagnostics is the side that I enjoy, and try and promote that as much as I can around my local area, sort of doing the jobs that other people don't want to take on, and having good success with them. So started my diagnostic journey around about 15 years ago with James, Technical Topics. Did a few courses, and then just recently Did the diagnostic technician course just to see where I was capability-wise. Gone on really well, and agreed with the lads to continue that into the Master Tech, and attained that as well. Learned masses of new testing techniques and understanding of systems. And my theory is that if you know how something works, you know how to test it, therefore you know how to fix it. And I'm very geeky, if you like, that if I've got a subject of interest, I'll want to know the ins and outs. I'll have like 12 different tabs open on a laptop, and I will research it until I can be 100% confident that what I'm saying is the truth. And, cross the T's and dot the I's on everything that I need to come across, basically. But it's been great. It's been a good journey. Meeting some of my heroes, people I look up to in the trade, and making a lot of new friends who help me out on a daily basis. Just having that network to sort of rely on somebody, because I am a one-man band, and sometimes it's good to just pick up the phone and have a chat and share a problem. And maybe, there may be a way, another angle of looking at it. I mean, Simon and John have both helped me out massively, numerous times. Just it's good to have a chat and get a second opinion on something,
Yeah, it is. It's a really powerful thing, I think, Mark, that, even you're not necessarily looking for an answer, but you're maybe looking for a different thought process, or somebody will just come at it from a slightly different angle, and it will spark that thing in your own mind. It will just unblock your log jam, won't it?
Yeah, it's very easy to go down the rabbit hole, and if you start rewinding your process, and you're thinking, oh, hold on a minute, I've missed a step here, or there's something that's staring me straight in the face, and it's a case of taking a break, grabbing a brew, and going at it from a different angle, and just making sure you haven't missed anything.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think one of the things that I always try to think of is, if I'm calling this £1,000 module, if it doesn't fix the car, what is the first test I'm going to do? Because that is a test I should have done before I've called that module. So that's where I've always got that in the back of my mind. Am I 100% in my conviction?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good sense check. That the what next test. Do it before you pull the trigger. Yeah, and there's lots of those, and it's funny that some of those things are actually, they're mind what would they say, mind coaching, or they're definitely about thought processes. Whereas we often think about Diag as being all about scan tools and plugging stuff in. A lot of it is a mental puzzle, and it's about not suffering a bias that you believe you know what the answer is when you don't, and having the confidence to take a bit more time to come up with the right answer, I think. And that's where you've got that in your network then, of being able to bounce off the conclusion that you're erring towards to get it sense checked, and that's the really powerful part of the process, really. And I think all the guys that do that are happy to share both ways. Happy to get the call, happy to be able to make a call and have somebody else do it for them. It's a really powerful part of the network.
Yeah, I think you said before, everyone just dives in. They think they should be, getting at the vehicle straight away. I tend to spend a lot more time now researching a system inside and out, working out a test plan, say 80% thinking about it and 20% doing, because you can sort of understand the system, split the system in half, know your expected results, and then when you're diving into it, you're not tripping yourself up and having a misdiagnosis, basically.
Yeah, going slower to go quicker. It's a bit weird. It's counterintuitive, really. Yeah, but it works. Yeah, no, good stuff. Thanks, Mark. Thanks for the intro. You've gone, John.
I was going to say, so it's like the 80-20 rule that we talk about, where 80% of the time you're doing your desktop diagnostics, as we like to call it, 20% of your time doing the tests, whereas when you're doing mechanical repairs, it's kind of inverted, where it's 20% maybe you're looking at how to pull something apart, 80% you're pulling it apart, and the mindset is to get in there and do something. but you've got to have a different thought process when you're doing diag. It's inverted. You're studying the system, you're understanding how it works, and then you get in and you do your tests. You know what you're expecting to see, because if you don't know what you're expected is, you might as well stick your multi leads, up your jacksie, to be honest with you, because if you don't know what you're expecting, what's the point in testing? So I just wanted to add from what Mark said there. Really.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you need that comparison, don't you? You need to be aiming, have a picture of what you're aiming for, because otherwise you don't know if it's a pass or a fail. If you have no expectation, all you end up with is a number, and you don't know where that number should sit in the rubbish pile or the good pile. You've just got, and I think there's a really the old fact of data. What's the difference between data and information? Well, data is just ones and zeros. Information is data that's useful because it's got a context, and I think that's probably the difference between measuring stuff when you don't know, it's just data. Measuring stuff when you're a diag tech, that's information. Yeah, cool stuff. So, Simon, if you might be able to share your background and history with the group, that'd be lovely.
Yeah, I'm probably coming to the industry sideways, really. The total time in the motor trade is under 5 years. I've always been interested on a hobby basis, and it's something I wanted to get into. And similar to what John said, looking around YouTube and Facebook, saw some of the videos that Steve was putting out, and very focused on, improve your knowledge, get some training. Here are some places to get training from, which is what I didn't know at the time. So my first formal training as such was back in 2019, which I started getting training then, but I didn't actually open my workshop until December 21. So my background was from school has been on railway signalling systems, all aspects of it, design, maintenance, testing new systems, but the area of it that I enjoyed the most was when I was on a response team in the mid-90s, which is basically, in automotive terms, it's mobile diag. So you'd get a call, you'd go out to some remote place and diagnose and rectify the problem. I love that part of the job, and because I like the brain work. So my workshop, small independent, North Manchester in Bury, it's called Motorlec. It's a business that had existed previously. It was closed for 5 years, and the opportunity became available to open it. It's just a short walk from the house, so I've no commute. So I just do diagnostics and electrical work, very small amount of mechanical, if that's what the diagnosis requires. Anything more major, I will either sub that work out to one of the local garages, or I'll just say to the customer, right, you take the vehicle directly to this other garage, because say everybody's got the speciality. I know who I'm going to send for, who I'm going to refer people to for welding, who I'm going to refer people to for a gearbox, that sort of thing, you know. So, you know, and those people call on me when, you know, when it's an electrical headache. So training wise, from 2019, I did some courses with Frank at ADS, and then I think there was the Auto Inform later that year, and then I spoke to James, and shortly after enrolled on the diagnostic. I said, met John and Mark there, and you know, said another few good lads there, and so lots of us have carried on into the Master Tech, you know, which has been something I've done mainly because of the coming sideways into the industry. Is, well, who are you? Who do you? How do we know you that you know what you're doing? So it was more for me to demonstrate to the potential customers that, you know, you're bringing your vehicle to somebody you can trust, that knows what they're looking at. Challenges, biggest challenge I've got is trying to run the business. I have my partner Jill doing reception 4 mornings a week, which takes lots of pressure off. But still, with the amount of phone calls and interruptions, it can get overwhelming sometimes. Challenges technically, the information. Sometimes I'll have to say no to a job because I haven't got the required information to hand. I mean, generally I'm using All Data and Hella. Sometimes I'll supplement that with manufacturers' own portals. Other times, it's just a case of making a decision of whether it's going to be viable to do that. Because I've got one I've come unstuck with previously was Infinity, because the system it hadn't been updated. It required you to have Windows XP with some old version of Java that it's just physically impossible to get now. So after spending probably about £100 on portal fees, it just that job was just a loss because I couldn't get anywhere with it.
Cool. Yeah, no, good stuff. And how does Jill, is Jill a willing partner in crime at your place? Does she enjoy that, or does she do it more because she's in love with you rather than in love with the job?
It's a bit of both. I mean, we've got to you know, so the problem I've got is trying to get time to train her up to do a few more things to take a little bit more pressure off. But yeah, so starting to transition like into the account side of it and parts ordering, things like that, you know, which, you know, it all helps to let me get on with things.
Yeah, it's a really big challenge. I found the same back when I was doing full-time diag and part-time training. It was probably the biggest challenge, was because you're the engine of the business, answering telephones and managing the interaction with clients, parts ordering, and, you know, looking up data and all that sort of stuff makes you sort of non-productive in a way. It's all necessary to get the job done, but, you know, it does affect the bottom line a little bit, or it doesn't affect the bottom line. It does in a roundabout way, because you end up doing sort of less jobs in a set period of time, or you end up having to go in a bit early and finishing a bit later to get through the workflow. So I really understand what the situation you're in there, Simon, and have had experience of it. And there's a couple of different strategies you try and employ to make it bearable, because again, it can be quite tough mentally on you personally. It makes you extra tired, and constant pressure makes us all a bit grumpy, and we can be a bit snappy when we shouldn't be. And also it's not necessarily that fair on your family and partners that you're under pressure, and they realise that you're not. I found in the deep areas of concern, I wasn't present. I'm at home, but I'm not really there. I'm teleported back to my problem job that I'm going to have to face in the morning, and I'm thinking about some of the tests I should have done, or what did that actually mean. And the pressure has an effect on ways that aren't necessarily obvious, and it's quite tricky to recognise, at what point you need to throttle back, because I don't know if it's the same for you, Simon and John, really, that you're because you are great at what you do, there's a lot of pressure on you from people coming with expectations, because you are the Messiah. You're the only one for 100 miles that can fix this thing. And their problems, not sort of your problems a little bit, but they definitely take their toll. Everyone's got an expectation that you're going to fix it, and you're going, yeah, right. The other 42 in front of you have also got that same expectation. Yeah. So it's tricky, tricky to make sure you're staying on top of your mental health as much as staying on top of the job, isn't it?
Yeah,
definitely. I would agree.
Yeah. What I do, I mean, my sort of process is to, I'll get a car in, from an inquiry, either if it's on the, if it's an in-person inquiry, I'll do a vehicle scan at that point. And if it's a telephone inquiry, I'll get them to pop down and I'll do that scan. Because, I mean, typically I'm booking, 2.5 weeks ahead. So within that time, I'll do what I call my homework. I'll look at the codes, reference the customer concern, and I'll look at the diagrams and say, right, well, here's where I'm going to be. Where can I test? What am I going to do? And say, on the day that vehicle comes in, I've already got it in my head. What I'll do, I'll shuffle the order of the work I've got booked. So if I think that something's going to need a part, I'll put that in for the first round of tests, so that I can get that ordered for the afternoon delivery. Where I think something's going to be a wiring repair, I'll leave that, I'll put that further back in the queue. So generally, like, the jobs always seem much simpler when I've done the homework, because I know exactly, so I'm going to go there, I'm going to expect that voltage, and do this, bang, 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 yes or no, next. And, so when that works, it's great. At least you've got your your first couple of tests planned out, because until you know the results of those, you don't know you don't know what step 3 is going to be. But yeah, it works out quite well. A lot of the time, I've just got a couple of scribble notes, but yeah, so a lot of the time they are as straightforward as that. But what I'm tending to find is that compared to when I used to, help out a couple of years ago, it was about 8 years ago now, just used to pop in occasionally. And the sort of jobs that were around then were much simpler. But these days, because everybody's looking things up on forums and YouTube, the easy stuff's all gone. So we're not getting the easy jobs anymore. Because people are DIYing those, and so when a lot of the time is they've had a go. It's not fixed it. Sometimes they've made it a lot worse. But I think this is where the proper diagnostic techs, really, show the worth, because you are only seeing the difficult jobs. You're not seeing the simple stuff.
Do you think there's still what I would call a virgin job? We used to classify a virgin job as one that's somebody's had a failure and you're probably the first one to look at it. What do those exist in your world, John? Do you get virgin jobs at yours, or are they generally, do they have some level of history with them?
To be honest with you, there's a lot of YouTube certified master technicians out there, isn't there, who are there is some good information on YouTube, don't get me wrong, but normally it's been to a few other garages, not just DIYers, and they've missed out on something. In my case, pretty basic, the way I interpret it, a simple fault, and they just really haven't got a clue how electricity works. And obviously that's to my benefit. I do get some of the more complicated jobs in, and I do struggle with them sometimes, but I've got the networks, the friends that I've made over the years. We've got a WhatsApp group for the MTs, and we bounce ideas back and forth. And like Mark was saying earlier, he'll say, just hang on a minute, just don't dive in just based on a TSB, for example. So there's a lot of TSB services out there. They're very good, very interesting, got some great information in, but from my own personal experiences, you have your process, you do your process, and if that TSB relates to your process, integrate it as part of your process, but it is not your process. Your process is your process. So what I like to do is something that I picked up from you guys, and Rob and Wilf and everyone, is get a whiteboard, big whiteboard, get some markers out, do your desktop diagnostics, and write it all down, because as we've been taught on diagnostic technician and master technician, we can't possibly keep all them numbers and that data in our head. It's just not viable. And if you have it there in front of you, better than writing it down on a notepad, and you go to it and you'll say, right, pin 1, I'm expecting to see X, what have I got? And then it just makes it so much easier when it's presented there in front of you on a whiteboard. And that has been one of the most beneficial things that I have done when it comes to diagnostics, is using that whiteboard to, initially it was to record my test results, but now I actually use it and I'll formulate a test plan. So I've got lots of different information, All Data, Autodata, Heller Gutman, Haynes Pro, some dealer stuff sometimes, and I'll go through the information and I'll get it up there on the board, and it's just such a massive help, because it stops everything getting in a muddle in your head, and you've got this process and you go to your whiteboard and you're like, yeah, I'm expecting this, I'm expecting that, and it just gets it all out of your head. And if you do get interrupted while you're on a job, which I regularly do, because the two lads need looking after, I'm running the reception, ordering the parts, everything, then I can go back to it and I'm like, right, where was I? And it's all there in black and white. in front of me. I'm like, right, yeah, I was here. This is my next test. And that helps a lot. So I would advise anybody that wants to do diagnostics and get involved in it, or is already involved with it, get it written down there on a whiteboard in your workshop, and it'll benefit you massively. And have your process, and the process is taught by the guys at TTHQ. You know, there's a circle of love, as we call it, which you know, helps you. You've got to have a process. You can't just go in there and, as James has said before, be knee deep in panels, and you haven't got a clue what wire's going where. And you know, especially with sort of network faults, you've really got to do your research, and you've really got to have a process. Otherwise, you'll just fall apart, and you won't fix the car. You'll be 6 hours in, the customer's not happy, you're not happy, and you're going nowhere. So I would recommend anybody to get trained correctly and get a process and keep working on it, and you'll become better. Surround yourself with people with the growth mindset. I was listening to a podcast the other day. It's on a different topic, but the guy said, if you surround yourself with people who drink beer and eat pizza, you're probably going to drink beer and eat pizza. If you surround yourself with people who, you know, have a growth mindset, who are interested in diag and want to fix cars the correct way, then you surround yourself with them, and they will lift you up to their level. And that's what I've done personally. Surrounded myself with people like Simon, people like Mark, got trained with James and the team, and yeah, it's so satisfying to be able to fix something that nobody else can.
Yeah, no, wise words. John, do you find the whiteboard where you're laying out your own diag process, how has that worked with the junior guys that you've got working with you? Does that help share that info in a positive way?
Yeah. Yeah, so we get it all out on the board, and I say we're going to do this test, this test, this test, this test, and I can explain to them, and then it's almost like, I mean, it is like being a teacher. You're at school, and they're like, well, why are you doing that test? What do we expect to see? And it engages them, and they become interested in what they're doing, because the two lads that I've got, I don't want them just fitting tyres and changing filters. I want them to grow and develop and be interested. And we've also got a big and old flat screen TV in the workshop, and if it does go quiet, which is not very often nowadays, we'll hook the Pico up, and we'll do some tests, and I'll explain, you know, what we're expecting to see. And the great thing about the scope is it makes you look very smart, but it is just a big multimeter drawing pictures basically, and it is very intuitive, and it's easy to understand once you get the basics. You know, I find it fascinating to be able to look at a visual representation of electricity on a big screen and talk about it, and yeah, it really engages them and helps promote you know, a passion and a growth mindset.
And a deeper understanding. I'm a visual learner. For me, it's got to be colours and pictures. If I need to understand a concept, I will get a piece of pen and a paper and I'll sketch it. You know, if I read it in a book, that's not quite so good. I can do that now because I've taught myself how to. But yeah, for me, the eureka moment when I first got into scopes, when they were, you know, green and a lot, you know, cathode ray tube, they were very old, and we were doing ignition and stuff like that. It just became quite obvious what was going on inside this thing you couldn't see. So you could see the moment in case of ignition circuits, you know, where the energy jumped the spark gap. And, you know, if there was some disturbance in the field and the combustion wasn't complete, you could see that having an effect where before we were looking at scope, the ear dyno might pick up a burble in the exhaust pipe, or you might notice the engine shudder, but you wouldn't really know why until the scope became involved, and all of a sudden the inner workings, the electron flow is exposed for everyone to see, And now we're even more spoiled, I suppose, that we can stop and play back in slow-mo, and we can see that glitch or that effect. And as a young lad, even, it was probably one of those inspiring things for me to go, do you know what? There's a different way of doing this. This makes sense to me. I'm not quite sure how to drive it even at that stage, but I go, do you know what? I can see where the wiggle changes and where the engine note changed, and I can put those two things together, and it gives me a bit of hope that I can fix that car because of that tool. So yeah, I'd agree. It is pretty awesome. Simon, in your place, are you big into the scope as well as multimeters and scan tools?
Yeah, I'd use I've got my Pico set up on the trolley, and I also use a small handheld scope, 2-channel. For those where you want a yes/no answer, you don't need to analyse anything in detail. You just want a yes/no answer. Does the signal look right? Is it there? Yes. Right. Okay. Move on. Brilliant. Just pop that under there on a wheel speed sensor. Clip on chassis, both channels on both wires. Put the key on, see what happens. You can see whether you've got an open or a short straight away, and then simple bypass test. If you think the sensor's faulty, simple bypass test. If that fails, then yeah, it's a wiring problem. I use my signal tracer, and generally the old green spot is found in 5 minutes with signal tracer.
Simon, would you mind sharing? You had a really interesting one, which again shows, as John said, with an oscilloscope, it can show you where the electricity is going. But for me, we talked about it recently on the day out that we had down here, about you can start to see mechanical interactions by inferring voltage changes, and we did that thing with we looked at mass channels, and we did some really clever stuff. You had a job with a signal wire was shorting out in the same frequency that the engine was moving. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Which is
yeah.
For a non-scoped person or somebody that needs a bit of convincing, tell us a bit about that job.
Yeah, it was a Jaguar XF. There was quite a few faults, but a few of them related to the turbo actuator, and a few related to the oil pressure sensor. So I thought, well, just get the diagrams out, have a look at what's what, and could see that the turbo actuator position sensor and the oil pressure sensor both shared a 5-volt reference to the ground. Oh, right. Well, there's some commonality there. So I thought, well, what's the easiest to get to? So there's an intermediate connector on the turbo actuator. So I thought, right, I'll scope that. So that one I did with the Pico. I went signal, 5-volt reference, and I used I just referenced that to the sensor ground, and started the engine up, started the scope, and I thought, this is funny. I've got a perfect square wave on my 5-volt reference, and I thought that it looked too good to be wrong. It was just a perfect sort of 50-50 duty cycle.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, no, there's not something weird on these engines, is there? So I thought, well, I'll increase the RPM. And first of all, it dropped out, and then it became erratic. And then once I got to about 2,500 RPM, I got a nice steady 5 volts. So let it drop back to idle, and got square wave again. I thought, no. So what was happening with the on the data when you looked at the turbo actuator, it looked like you looked at the data on face value, it looked like the arm was flapping all over the place when it was staying perfectly still. And the oil pressure sensor was also a temperature sensor, so it was actually sending a data packet back, not an analog voltage. So what was happening? It was getting half a packet of data. You could see that on the scope. So after I started to stop the engine a few times, it actually stopped with, I had 0 volts on my 5-volt reference, so I thought, great. So what I did, I unplugged both components, and that's where I used my signal tracer and found the sort of suspect area. And yeah, there was some damage, and the strands were just about sort of touching. So but what I'd done with the Pico, I'd used the cursors and scoped and measured the frequency of this 5-volt, the square wave on the 5-volt reference, and it come up as double idle speed, because it gives you frequency in hertz and it gives you a translation to RPM. So I thought, well, the engine actually is bouncing at that frequency, 4-cylinder engine. So that's when it sort of made sense, that something's making and breaking as the engine moves. And it was quite a good one, that.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting how you got to that, recognizing that something that looked like it could have been, a duty cycle or pulse width modulated signal, but you're going, hang on, it doesn't stack up because that's a 5-volt reference, and I know that because I can see the wiring. And then, that when the frequency matched the, is matching the RPM, you're going, yeah, maybe that's a new type of dynamic movement sensor you've just discovered there. But was the other sensor was a sense sensor, was it? And the 5 volts were dropping out. Was the one of the?
Yeah, I didn't look too deeply into the signal, but I could see what was happening, because there was also there's faults for the throttle position sensor as well. So I found in the same spot where the damage was. So there was the 5-volt reference, which had rubbed through, and there was just like one strand just about touching, and there was a wire that was shorting from the TPS. So yeah, everything. I think there was one other thing which I didn't resolve at the time, but I didn't know whether it was as a consequence of these other faults. So I repaired those, and I said, well, come back to me, and we'll see, if anything's relogged, which it hadn't. So it must have been, that was a secondary, like, as a consequence of the first faults. It was a definitely a strange one, that was.
Yeah, interesting on that. What was the, so we say technically that was quite an interesting job. What was the human aspect? Because I'm sort of interested to also think a little bit more about, okay, technically some of the challenges we get. are problems to oversolve. What was the human story that went along with that car and that problem, Simon? Was there a bit of a drama? Had the car been elsewhere? Was there much of a story with it?
Well, it came from one of the local garages that are a regular, and they'd done some engine work on it, and the customer was blaming them. Now, judging by where this damage was, it didn't stack up that it was something that was caused by them. Because right at the back, on the passenger side, where the loom goes into the sort of scuttle area, there's a diagonal brace at the back of the engine bay, and the damage was under there. There's like a rubber grommeted pass through where this harness goes through towards the engine ECU, and it was in that sort of pass through area where it was damaged. But it looked like something that had occurred over a long time rather than just a single pinpoint, single incident damage.
Yeah, quite. It's often, we do find that it's often difficult for the client who's not maybe technically aware to understand that's a long unfolding thing, and they often look for coincidental events to maybe apportion some level of, maybe not blame's not the right word, but fault of the other person. How has this happened at the same time? Well, it's coincidental. It sort of just has. But was the customer, your client was pretty cool? Were you doing it for the end user or for another garage there, Simon?
Well, for the other garage, but so what I did is I forwarded some of my pictures of what I'd found, and like where it was, like location, under the covers, what had to be removed to get to the harness to repair it, and so the customer was more understanding then. So that was the feedback from the other garage. Once the customer had seen what the damage was, what had to be done to repair it, then they sort of understood then that it wasn't the first garage's fault, and that the repair cost was justified.
Yeah, cool stuff. Mark, you just dropped out for a second there. We just were talking about Simon's job where he had the bouncing engine that was causing the short.
Yeah, I could hear you. I just couldn't contribute. I could hear what was going on.
Oh, no worries. No, cool stuff. And so, we're talking really about the benefits then of the pictorial element of oscilloscopes and how they can help sort of, to diagnose things that maybe would be less obvious if you didn't have that as a mechanism. Are you using the scope, Mark, in your place much? Have you?
Yeah, as much as I can. The wiggly lines of truth, and more importantly, proof.
Yeah.
Proof. Yeah, I mean, relative compression testing is a no-brainer. Pressure pulse, networking faults, anything, even just basics. I'll tend to get the scope. I've got a little one-channel one now that I use for Lin faults.
Oh, nice.
It's only a cheapy one, but I just done a Lin fault for a washer pump inoperative. There was an MOT failure. It was referred from a trade customer. I think it was a 20-plate Audi A8 that's actually got its own control module for the washer pump.
Nice.
I mean, just to show how things are advancing, it's just got its own. It's a module just for the washer pump alone. So just basically 5 wires, power and ground for the module, power and ground out to the pump, and then a link communication signal. Hooked it up to the scope straight away, where I find that obviously if people aren't using scopes, they're only doing half a diagnosis, because there's no way you're going to verify that signal. I can see just straight away off the trace I had high resistance. I used a jumper off the wiper motor to reinstate it. Washers worked. I knew where I was going, and there was a 6-inch section of corroded wire underneath the brake servo. Again, not the easiest to access, but people just don't seem to understand that plugging a scanner in. I mean, if there was a scanner out there, I'd pay. You name your price if I could plug a scanner in and say there's a wire broken in the near side rear wheel arch. Take my money, But it just gives you that first point of reference for then you to understand your circuit, do your homework, find out the route into the loom. You're looking for contact points. You're looking, areas of movement, like Simon said just now, with the engine rocking. You've got to
heat and vibration,
the whole picture.
Yeah. Mm. It's interesting. I often think of the people with the scan tool, and we not trying to be nasty or mean, but there's an old saying that if your only tool is a hammer, every problem you see will be a nail.
Yeah.
Meaning that you've got no other capability of, even if it's a screw, you've got a hammer, it's going to get hammered. It needs screwing. Yeah. You've really got a hammer. Yeah. And I think a lot of people in the trade who are using single-dimensional tools, they bought the latest and greatest from XYZ company, and they're plugging it in to expect it. Probably doing a disservice to themselves. They're probably doing a disservice to their client. They're definitely doing a disservice to the wider trade and industry. But how do we get the message out there to the average garage? And one of the questions for you guys would be: do you think they care? Do other garages with a scan tool really care? They get away with it most of the time. It's easy. They don't have to go on training. How do we get the message out that it could be so much easier for themselves and better for their customers if they had training or knowledge or a bit something else? What do you think?
I think personally that the training doesn't cost; it pays, because I'm getting through jobs far quicker than I ever used to now, and it's investing in yourself rather than just the tooling side of things. It's your knowledge to be able to fix those problems that others necessarily can't. And I think the trade moves at such a fast pace. A lot of people now, they've buried their head in their sand for so long. I think they're a bit sort of scared to get into it now, because they may feel that it doesn't matter what stage of the process you come in on your journey. But I try to work out that I'm trying to work on the understand that I know more today than I did yesterday, and that's what's important to me. I will research a system to death just to understand it. I mean, just recently, the last 2 days, my sort of homework, if you like, has been on airbag, ECU strategies and circuit design, just the monitoring on how it sends out a pulse at so many hertz, just to work out the resistance of a certain component, and how it actually sees if the wires are shorted together, whether it's open, whether it's short to power, and how it pulses a current to then work out the resistance and then do a self-check. And if you understand that, then substitution and bypass testing becomes a hell of a lot easier.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that circuit design, understanding the circuit function gives you, I think that's a bit of a superpower, really. And I think the guys and girls that are using scan tools alone have got, maybe because they're not probing the wire to measure stuff, don't really even realize how significant or how important that is, that you understand circuit design and function, you understand circuit monitoring, you understand voltage and current flows. John, you said in the introduction, actually, a lot of the stuff you're getting to is fundamental basic electrics. That circuit's gone wrong in some sort of way. We know in the group there are 3 faults in a circuit that's affecting the current or the voltage. You're only looking for one of those 3, but how do we get that message, to the garage down the road, or the guy that's failing to diagnose stuff? What's in it for him? Why should he bother, I suppose? What would you think, John?
Well, personally speaking, I know that Simon is one of the most gifted techs in the United Kingdom. And he's been runner-up in the top tech final, and I'm sure one day he will win it. I know the equipment that Simon has got. He's got a couple of scopes, but he hasn't got the latest and greatest scan tool. You know what I mean? He hasn't got a 10 grand Zeus, for example. No offense to Snap-on or anything. The most important thing when it comes to diagnosis is not the tool you're using, although you've got to have some good tooling. The scopes are very advantageous. It's the thing between your ears, and that's your brain. And if you're working on cars and they're beating you up, you need to go out there and get trained, or you need to leave them alone. As I think it was Jason said on a previous podcast, you can't do a little bit of diag. You've either got to do diag or don't do it at all, because you're just going to come. Yeah, you're gonna come unstuck, and you're going to end up running around. You're going to end up looking at Google, YouTube, whatever, and you're going to end up in a big mess. And you're better off leaving it to people who actually know what they're doing, who've been trained and are knowledgeable. And I'm not trying to say that we are the elite, because I'm certainly not. I learn more and more every day by hanging around with these guys and having an interest in it. You've got to have an interest in it. If you want to swing spanners and you want to do oil and filters and you want to do tyre fitting and do brakes, there's nothing wrong with that. It's not a derogatory thing to do. The industry needs people who can do that, but the cars are so complicated nowadays. You've got to have training. I mean, even there's specialists. They talk about podcasts I listen to in America about specialists. So you have an ADAS specialist, an air conditioning specialist, an alignment specialist, and to know it all, and I certainly don't know it all, is very, very challenging. So just if you're interested in diag and you want to do it, I'd recommend that you go for it and you learn it, and you go to get trained by clever people like James and the guys at TTHQ, and you meet the people who are interested in it, the same as what you are, and you will grow. And as they say, a rising tide lifts all ships, and that's what's happened with me personally over the last 6 years, hanging around with these guys. If you're into it, we act stronger together, and but if you're not, and it's not for you, then that's fine. But don't go in there and just think you're going to fix it all from the driver's seat. You can get a lot of information from the driver's seat if you understand what you're looking at, you understand what the PIDs are, what the PIDs mean. But you can't really play it doing it. You've got to be trained. You can't, unless you've got to have training, and you've got to have equipment, and you've got to have networking to be successful at what you're doing. That's my opinion, anyway.
Yeah, and you make some really valid points there, John. I think as Jason Bowden said, you can't do a little bit of diag. I think the problem is you can, if you buy a scan tool, you can do a little bit of diag. You can get yourself just about deep into the muck that leads you to believe you might need a part. You then, as a novice tech, you're sort of committed because you've got a code and you think it might be that code, and you don't know how to test the thing, so you throw a part at it thinking, well, that might fix it, not knowing that actually, more likely it's the wires than the part or the connections. You throw a part at it. Now your customer owes you money for labor, money for a part, and the car's still exactly the same. For me, the incredible thing is, I can understand how that happens. I can understand how that happens once, and I can understand the garage that's not great at diag ought to go, do you know what? We've been caught at that. Let's not do it again. But for me, the incredible thing is where garages persist that I got a code, I've replaced the part, it hasn't fixed it, and send that job somewhere else, or whatever. But another car comes in, maybe the same thing the next day, and they repeat the same darn process, and they scan it, they get a component part, they put a part on it, it doesn't fix it yet again, and they're in that same situation. I wonder what the magic source is. What is the magic message, Simon? What is the message to garages that are persistently scanning and just failing? What do we need to? What's their way out of the doom loop?
Well, I think with there being so many rubbish parts out there now, that they're not and a lot of them that I deal with, they've brought jobs to me and they've been caught out. They've actually diagnosed it correctly in the first place, but they fitted a junk part, which is it's gone from a non-runner to something that runs quite badly. And I tell them that, because they haven't always told me that they've replaced a part. I say, oh, it's the cam sensor. It's putting out a corrupt signal. So it's a waste spark system. So for every 2 revolutions, one coil's firing once and the other coil's firing 3 times. And sometimes it's trying to push the engine backwards. So it can't be that. I've just replaced that part. I said, no. Where from? What brand? I won't mention the brand, but I've never known that particular brand, be able to produce a cam sensor that works. So I said, get a genuine one, and it'll fix it. And they've been and got a genuine one, and it's fixed it. So because genuine parts are not always. I've had a surprise from Mercedes because I questioned the price of the part for a wheel speed sensor, and they said £16. And I go, really? So I said, I'm definitely having a genuine at that price. But because generally the genuine parts are more expensive, they're now thinking, it's not a 15 quid job, it's 115. I'm sure I'm going to put that on as a guess, and and the answer generally is no. They won't guess at something at that price.
But does that,
especially when
sorry to interrupt, but does that go to further reinforce they shouldn't even do a scan? Because as you've cited there, if they've done a plug-in, they've got a code, and they're not really sure, they're not willing to commit the genuine part that might fix it. They're going, I'm not really sure, I'm going to throw an Italian-sounding branded cam sensor on it, and it not fix it, but it's changed it. Is that not further evidence that you shouldn't even play about with the diag? So for the average garage, it's another blocking thing. Never mind they don't know about wires and signals. It's just the price of the part when they're not sure is further recommendation that why did you even start down that route? What can we do?
Because I think a lot of it is that it's a regular customer, and the vehicle is, say they start off thinking, oh, it'll just be a simple thing. Because if it's anything complex, they won't want to get involved. But if it looks simple, they'll start. The thing is, for the smaller 1 or 2 person garages, you can understand that they might want to do that. When you've got a garage with, say, probably 5+ techs, really you need to have somebody that's up there in the diag, because yes, you have got plenty of general servicing jobs, but you need, in a garage of 5 or more techs, one of those guys needs to be at least what I would a qualified diag tech, or at that level, to be able to get those those basic diagnostics correct. Fair enough, if it's more complex, sub it out to somebody like me, maybe. But I think the worst one, and generally, sort of November to February, you'll get a vehicle come in. It's had a new battery, a new starter motor, a new alternator, because somebody can't test a voltage drop. And what do we find? A corroded block ground every time. So customers spend.
What in that case, what is it? How should the garages even be scanning stuff? If they can't do a fundamental rudimentary check like a voltage drop on the ground, and they're spending the client's money of 100 quid for a battery, 200 quid, for an alternator, you maybe plus a few hours here and there, you're into 500 or 600 quid, and you still haven't fixed the fault. Two questions. When should the garage identify it's gone beyond their scope, of capability? So is that when they get a code that they might understand, but they're not sure, should they stop? Or should they stop when they've replaced one part that hasn't fixed it? Or in your situation there that you described, Simon, should they stop after the second part that hasn't fixed it? If you were talking to an independent garage owner who's plagued with misdiagnosis, they're good customers that they're trying to help, they're actually failing because they're not fixing it. What's a sensible rule of thumb, do you think, for a garage to stop them getting in that bad situation where they've got parts spent, they've got money spent on labour, and the car's still the same? When is the stop? When should they pull the ripcord? When should they pull the chain on the train to stop the diagnostic train rolling out of the station? What is a sensible way of behaving if you don't know what you're doing?
I would say get trained or don't get involved personally.
Yeah, I mean the thing is, you're never going to stop them getting involved because they already are. You could tell Joe Bloggs to not get involved. Yeah. That's a fair comment. But when you've got an independent garage owner, they've got a scan tool, so they're going to use it. Say a lot of the time, you can be right, but it's people don't understand the subtleties of some of the wording of the fault codes, because if it says the general thing is blah 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 name of part, we'll change that part.
So is the problem one of linguistics, that they don't really understand English? It's not even they don't understand cars. Is that?
Well, no, it's this. It's not reading it and understanding what it's trying to tell you. If it says circuit high, circuit low, and if it says something like range stroke performance or implausible, it's case well, why so you've got to then understand the system to understand what it doesn't like.
Yeah. Is it a circuit code? Is it range performance?
Yeah. So that's the.
Or is it a mechanical influence causing that code?
That's the thing.
So is it one then? Is it? So could a garage owner that wasn't great at diag identify the fact that if they didn't really understand what the code was beyond the part that says it's a cam sensor, if they don't understand what the second bit of that code is, they shouldn't go any further? Would that be a rule to stop them getting in the mire?
Well, yeah, but I think you're never going to stop that, and the only sensible way forward is for training, because I mean, with what you can, the training that's available, both in person, online, you can, if you think about, if you say, stop and have a think, how much diagnostic work have you done in a month, and how many times did you get it wrong? I mean, I don't know how many times people are getting it wrong. But let's say you were wrong to the tune of 500 quid. It's a case of, have you swallowed that 500 quid, or have you build the customer anyway. But when you think about some of the, you could put that money into training and
Definitely.
get, and you could easily counteract that effect.
Yeah,
Just
that's really interesting.
Basic knowledge of, so correctly using a multimeter. So if you're unsure on scopes, there's, people have seen the small handheld that I use, and it's, for a very low cost item, it's gonna get you 90% of what you want to know. It's only when you need detailed analysis that you want to go. There's a very, very small commitment there. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. So back to your point then, Simon, about the fund. So what we could say was then if they made a mistake that cost them 500 quid, the 500 quid's gone. But we could say, well, if you didn't even go past the fault code the next time, you've saved yourself the loss of 500 quid and put that towards. So at some point, they have to not do it to not lose the 500 quid. Because each time they keep doing it, they dropped in the hole another 500 quid. You could say the money they would have for training has been spent on parts the customer wouldn't pay for. It almost comes to the point you have to say, look, if you're not very good at diag, if your failure rates, which is the point you were making actually really well, if you're failing, if you've got a 50% failure rate, so half of the jobs you do diag on aren't fixed first time, they are parts that aren't required because the condition of the vehicle didn't change, you could identify as a garage owner that you're not great at diag, and that's probably going to be not because you haven't got the latest tool from Snap-on, as John said, you've spent 10 grand on a cart and a diag tool. It's not a tool issue. This has to be a person issue. If you're getting a failure rate of maybe 1 in 2 jobs, 1 in 3, 30% aren't being fixed, stop, time out, right? Do your basic code read. If it's not something really obvious, refer it to one of you guys, and let's look after your customer well, because if it comes to one of you guys, you're going to fix it first time. You're not going to waste money on parts. You're not going to have excessive labour charges. It's going to get done. As a garage owner, they can go, well, we're better off doing that. And the money we didn't lose on parts, we'll put that into a fund where we develop each other. And, as you guys said, podcasts, online training, there are all sorts of ways where you can have a pretty low commitment to bettering yourself in your own workplace in the evening to go, do you know what, we're getting a flavour for this. We're liking the sound of knowing this stuff. I sit on some of the stuff from the States, and it's for what it is, it's great. But I think what we could agree to is maybe it's analysing the failure rate to know that they're no good at it.
Yeah, it's one of those things that's very hard for anybody to admit, but. And I think the case of getting people getting together and just on these little weekend things that that happen a couple of times a year that that some of us go on. It's just everybody always brings something, say, well, like little techniques on how to do things, and just a general little update. But
yeah, for invested techs, they're free, aren't they? So those network gatherings, are done. They're hosted by like-minded techs who get together, who share, like you say, share thoughts and ideas. That's the ultimate, way to do the first step, isn't it? Really, those type of things. There's not a reason why, not a good reason why you shouldn't do it. I suppose it doesn't have to cost a fortune, does it, to make the first steps to enlightenment? It's a point well made.
Yeah, so and I think it's just a case of a lot of the time it's having that little bit of time with no pressure to just have a go at things and you know, like look at simple circuits. I mean, it's like some of the it's just having the right little test adapters. I mean, like some of the labs locally, they haven't got back probes, you know, or your Pomona piercing probes, that sort of thing.
So sorry, I was just going to say they get the terminal kits that are made. I'm sure they're made by other people as well. The AES wave stuff, which is basically 4mm bananas, and you've got your proper pin sizes for front probing stuff. Obviously, you've got to make sure you get the right one. You don't want to splay the terminal. Stuff like that is fantastic, and you can convert your testing equipment so everything's on a 4mm banana, so it all just fits together. So you're not messing around wrapping pieces of wire together, thinking, oh, have I got a good connection here or there or whatever, you know? And the equipment is out there, and a lot of the equipment isn't that expensive.
You'll make it yourself as well.
It's a well made, actually. What about you know, the qualification of somebody that knows what they're doing? Could we say, if you don't know how to use your multimeter, you know, we picked this very simple test of a voltage drop test. You could say, lads, we're going to have a quick survey in the workshop. Does everyone know how to do a voltage drop test? And if anyone says no, you should say, well, you can't use the scanner then, because if you can't just do that basic test, if you use the scan tool and pick a code, you can't even do the fundamental checks on the circuit to see if it's functioning. I'm trying to think of a perspective where the garage owner doesn't get themselves in a mess with a job, and there has to be a sort of qualification point. And any fool with a finger can drive a scan tool. I think what's been, I mean, the scan tool is, you know, it's giving you a clue of where to start looking. You know, it can't know the absolute answer. So, I mean, somebody mentioned, you know, like recently about, you know, think of the fault code as a postcode, and the actual fault as being the room in a house. You know, I love that analogy, Simon, and I'll take it on one step further. And in my mind, your scan tool is the sat nav, and your multimeter is the car. And a lot of people are actually walking rather than driving using the sat nav.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
I mean, can I just say, going back to what you were saying about with the garages reading a code? So basically, they will just see something that they recognise. Say, for instance, heat a circuit on a lambda, and they will fit one. They've got no idea how to test that circuit, and it's the most simple circuit in the world to break it down and test it. But they will fit one, and then it doesn't cure the fault. It may take a while for the monitors to run and reset that code. They're going to clear that light. They're going to think, oh, hunky-dory, give it a quick little 5-minute test drive, give it back to the customer. It's back the next day, and that's when the likes of us get involved. But if you can't interpret the live data, say, i.e. you've got a system 2 rich code, for instance, all you're going to do is look at that map sensor, and you think, right, hold on a minute, this engine's not timed up correctly, or it's got a mechanical influence. But until you understand what's in front of you, and you know how that system works, then, you know, I would think that a lot of people, fuel system 2 lean, for instance, are they using a smoke machine? You know, to start off, have they got fuel pressure testers? Are they using a scope to looking at in real time, you know, what the O2 is doing? Are they actually narrowing the data pins down to get in a faster?
Yeah, well, I think with what you're saying there, Mark, is that, you know, some of the conversations I've had with people, I said, well, what's your live data showing for such and such and they go, oh, not looked at that.
Yes,
I don't know how to.
Crazy.
You know,
crazy.
And it's like, well, you know, so well, look at this data, see what it's telling you.
Yeah.
And, you know, say, what are your fuel trims showing? You know, and they just go, Oh, I haven't looked at that.
It's getting the most out of your investment to understand how the tool works. I've always said, if I had a helicopter, there's no way I'm getting in it without learning how to fly it. You know, and it's
well, another great analogy there, Mark, you picked up is the airplane. I often think of some of these enhanced scan tools as the garage has bought an airplane and they're using it like a car to run around the airfield. Then they don't stand a chance of taking off. They're driving this airplane around the airfield.
They're not getting the full. They're not using it to its full capability because they don't understand what it can do.
What it's capable of. Yeah.
And maybe they bounce the training up. You know, we've seen a lot. We hear a lot about, you know, people that have bought a scan tool from a company that even offers training, and they didn't take up the training, the user training. They got the tool and they're hopes that because they've got a finger and a digit, they can press the buttons, that they'll understand how it works. And maybe it's a bit, you know, the subtlety is it's about the data it presents, as you said, Simon and Mark. You know, if you understand the data, you can look at the PID, you get an idea of what's going on, and you can make a conclusion. AdBlue faults for me are the current, you know, avalanche status of knock sensor issue. That's a 500 quid part. If you can get a knock sensor, happy days. It's likely to be on back order. You're going to have a countdown warning light on because the AdBlue system's gone into trip mode. You're under pressure because the client's now freaking out. The car's going to kick them to the curb, and you're stuck there because you plugged your scan tool in and you've got a lean, you know, SCR or NOx deficiency below the threshold fault code. What on earth do you do, you know, as a garage? And you're looking at it going, what might be a knock sensor? You know, bonkers, isn't it? It's absolutely crazy.
It might be a £500 part. Again, you're back to what you were saying earlier. So going back a little bit, what you're saying about fitting genuine parts. So everything that I can get that has got a plug on it comes from the dealer that I fit in my garage, and the cost of the parts, you know, these are £700, £800, £1,000 parts. I've got to be 100% sure before I fit that part that I've made the diagnosis accurate. And there's a lot of people buying even what we thought were reputable manufacturers of electrical parts. They've just become boxing agencies, and you don't actually know what you're getting in that part. So everything that I fit that I can, obviously some of the older cars I can't, they comes from the dealer. And even when I'm testing something, a battery light on, for example, 99 times out of 100, it's probably going to be the alternator. But every time I will test it, I will test the output from the ECU. I will test the power, the ground, the wires, you know, whatever, however it's controlled, LIN or whatever. And I'll make sure that I'm putting that alternator on, it's going to fix the car. And if we can, as we develop and grow and become better technicians, we can use bypass tests, decade boxes, substitute things, and we can clear that code before we've even got the part and rung up and spoke to the dealer and said, you know, I want an alternator or whatever. We know before we've even fitted that part that it's going to fix the car with the advanced tests and that we've been shown and learned. And
again, it's going back to understanding it, though, John. It's completely understanding it to be able to manipulate that circuit into a value that the ECU is going to be happy with. Now, you're only going to know that if you know the system inside and out, and you can make a good call, 100% call, say, right, this, as you say, you've done your bypass test, there's no more you can do. A good quality part is going to fix it. Customer goes away happy.
Yeah, really good point. I think what we're describing there, we could classify a little bit as diagnosis. So I think you could ask a garage that didn't really know what they were doing, what they're charging for in their diagnosis, and I think they would come back and they would reference plugging in a tool and pulling codes. I think if you asked a garage that knew what they were doing, what they charged for diagnosis, that which the first garage talked about wouldn't feature in what the good garage is doing for diagnosis, because what professional guys are doing, like you guys, your diagnosis, as you said there, John, is going to be, we might use a code reader to validate there is a code in there. which is about 2 or 3%, 5%, 10% of what you're going to do. The other 80, 90% of what you're going to do is about validating that fault condition using other tools, the scope or the multimeter or a loaded test light, or you're going to get substitution, a decade box, a simulator, a bridge wire. You're going to validate that if you rectify the issue in that piece of wire, that the behavior is going to change. That description of diagnosis is really what the good garages are doing. And I think you could almost classify how good is your diag by what proportion of the diag you're referencing as a scan tool. Because the good guys, it's a very, very small percentage, whereas the novices, it's most of what they're doing. Is that fair?
I would agree.
True.
I would agree, yeah.
Yeah, quick scan on a Google and order the part.
Yeah, a scan. So with that in mind then, chaps, let's think about, the thorny issue of, I know this has come up in conversations we've had before, particularly, what about charging for diag? So if your novice garage is doing mostly a plug-in for their 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 quid, and you guys are doing high-level complicated stuff with a range of tools and a head full of knowledge, how do we square the circle of that you're more expensive? How do those conversations go down that because you have got an elevated level of expertise, how do you overcome what you charge in comparison to what your client, the novice, might imagine as being a diag?
A lot of my work, I get recommendations from other people. Especially, sometimes the trade will be passed me direct from the garage. Sometimes they'll refer the customer to me, and they know that I've got a better chance of fixing it, basically, because I am invested in the training side of things. It's not so necessary. I think it's not so necessary the tooling. I know a few things I struggle with, the programming and software updates, but actually the diagnosing of the fault. It is mainly your data systems and the understanding of the system.
Do you have a problem, with your charge? Do people cite what you charge, Mark, to look at, or if you give them a price or a quotation for the diag, are they scoffing? How do you?
I've had a few. I've had a few that obviously have sort of gasped in, and they've said, "Oh, I'm not paying that," and I've had a few come back after they've been elsewhere to no avail, and I fixed it and they've gone away happy, and they're happy to pay my money then because they can see the value in what I'm offering. I say like Stella Artois, reassuringly expensive.
So the way I approach it is like a multi assessment. So I'll do the as I call it, the global scan and report, which is the fault code read, if you like. And then I'll do my first hour of diagnostic assessment. And the rate's what I've decided after looking at my business, and the rate's the rate. I'm not going to disclose what it is, not that it's a secret. But what I have found is the amount that I do ask for, it's kind of acted as a filter. And all the people, I'm going to bring my own parts brigade, and I've been on Google, and my mate Fred down the pub's had a look at it already, and he says it's this. I don't see them; they don't come. But sometimes I will get. It's been to three other garages, like I said previously, and we just don't know what to do. We're at our wits' end. Can you help? And by at that point, they've already been drained of probably money from incorrect parts and diagnosis, but they're just so desperate. And when you get their car and you fix it and you put a good quality part on it, and you're doing it in a couple of days, when they've been having a headache with this thing for the last 6 months, you'll get their business every time. They'll just come back to you. They won't go anywhere else. Even though you are, like Mark says, reassuringly expensive, you will retain their trade and you will have a successful business and be more profitable.
Yeah,
that's
great. So you're building loyalty then, John, in your customer base, because you can fix that, and also your garage is geared to do service maintenance and MOT, isn't it? It's not just a diag.
Yeah. So we get
Simon,
the diag, and then sorry.
Go on, sorry, Tom.
Go on. I was to say you get the diag, but you also get the repeat business. Then you get the servicing. Then you get your MOTs and the tyres and the cam belts and the clutches and the exhausts. And that's just sorry about that. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I was thinking then maybe a little bit about Simon's situation, because Simon isn't really geared into service and maintenance. So, you know, what besides solving people's problems, Simon, do you see a lot of retail, or is yours mostly trade, and do you get repeat business because you've solved the thorny issue?
So I would say I'm roughly 50-50 trade and retail. Generally, the retail ones are more virgin jobs. Sometimes you get ones that have been elsewhere that they've either said they can't fix it, or they've had a go, and I've a lot of the time, like I say, they've spent a lot more elsewhere to not fix it than they've spent with me to fix it. And that is quite frustrating, for me, because I think I've charged a fair price, but also, how can you charge so much to not fix it? And that all comes back to what we've been talking about half an hour ago. That this, and what one of the first things that was said in the diagnostic course, this unconscious incompetence, and like this going through, the conscious incompetence, and then the getting all the way through to unconscious competence. It's just that, so because
it's a journey.
The people that are charging money to not fix it don't believe they're doing anything wrong.
And that's sort of criminal in itself, isn't it? Really, that not criminal. That's the wrong word, but it's not really giving your client the best possible service if you're not ripping them off necessarily, but because you haven't trained as a garage and you're doing basic scans and you're throwing parts at it, you think that's normal, but really in the real world that's a bit disingenuous. Guys, here's a question for you then. This is always a tricky one. If I gave the option of an existing client that you've already got, you're interacting with them as a job, or a new client, which is your favorite of those two types?
I'm going to say an existing client, personally.
Same. Just because you've already got that relationship, they know what they're getting as a service. They've got their faith in you. You know what to expect off them. They've always been a good payer, i.e., they're happy with your work. It's the type of customer as well. As you said, you want the type of customer who's going to go down the golf club of an evening, or go to the local posh restaurant and talk about you, and obviously say, "Oh, go see Mark. He's fantastic. His service is spot on." He does what he says on the tin.
Yeah,
it's an interesting one. Do you think those guys then are helping you with your own? They're marketing your business for you in a positive light. You've had the success. You've helped them out. They're decent people. They pay well. They know the value of what you do. They actually end up driving more people like them to your door.
Definitely. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Obviously, they'll bring their family. They'll bring their friends, and I've got some really good customers, really good customers, because obviously, they see the value in what I provide. I will go that extra mile. There's a few jobs that I take on that I probably shouldn't. But I don't think that'll ever change.
No.
I just like to test myself sometimes.
Yeah, no, interesting. And John, what about you? You were saying that you prefer an existing client than a new one.
Yeah. So to use the analogy that we've used before, birds of a feather flock together. So we want these good customers, the A's and the B's, and we don't, we want to be in a position where we can not be arrogant about it, but if the fit isn't right for us as a garage and you as a customer, then we can say, I'm sorry, we've got this way of doing things. This is how we do it. This is what we charge. And if that doesn't work for you, then I'm afraid we're not the garage for you. And being able to select your customers so the relationship works for yourself and for the customer. So you are getting inundated with I've got my own parts. I've got this crappy part in a white box from China off eBay. Will you fit it for me? They're like, this is my business. This is how I do it. I'm like, otherwise you're not the right customer for me. And once you get to a level of you've got 25 cars in the car park and everybody's wanting to use you, then you can start being selective about your clientele. You can say, I'm sorry, we're not the right garage for you. If you want to have part one tires and you want to have crap parts off eBay, that's not for us. You can go somewhere else. See you later. Bye. This is us. This is what we do. So that's the way I see it, really.
And to string a bit of detail on that, John, you've got that perspective about quality parts and non-part worn tires because you truly, honestly believe that's not the best way to maintain your car reliably, isn't it? That's what you're telling those people, that if you want reliable transport that's not going to let you down, that's not going to break down outside the swimming pool when your kids have got dripping wet hair, you do it the way we suggest, because we've got an expertise in maintaining and servicing motor vehicles, and we know if you put genuine parts on it and good tyres and you service it regularly and you maintain it to our advice, you will have few problems.
Tried and tested.
Yeah. And the complexity of the vehicles I'm not going to say the future, the vehicles that are here today, the EVs, the hybrids, is far more advanced than the traditional ICE engines, and there's a massive skills shortage at the moment already just in the ICE vehicles. So what is it going to be like when the EVs and the hybrids and the alternative fuel vehicles start to go wrong? You're not going to be able to do it unless you upskill. If you can't fix an ICE car now, you've got no chance of fixing an EV or a hybrid or an alternative fueled vehicle in the future. So
there's a great deal of them out there already. They're in the workshops already, and people are struggling.
Yeah, they are struggling. Yeah.
So if you're not going to get trained,
go on. Sorry, John. You got
I was just saying, if you're not going to get trained, then you're really going to struggle. And we're sat here as master technicians, and it's not about us sitting here and saying you're all rubbish. It's like you've got to train if you want to carry on being in this business, because of the advancements in technology that are here and coming in the future. You've got to train, or you're going to struggle.
And we've all been on that journey about signposting. Simon mentioned signposting, and you yourself, John, said sometimes as a garage there's something you need to do, but maybe it's not clear and obvious the route, and getting signposting to decent training is one of those things. And Simon mentioned there's a simplish way you can join groups and networks to sort of lift yourself, to try to see if that's something that you want to do. So I agree. We're not trying to be disrespectful of garages that aren't necessarily capable of doing in-depth diagnosis. We're saying recognize your strengths as well as your weaknesses and try and avoid falling into a problematic trap. And if you want to get better at it, there is a way to do it. So if you think your future is in diag and is in EV, it is in complex faults, get some training, and you can do that work successfully and profitably. Simon, I'm going to come to you and ask you, would you prefer new customer, new clients, or dealing with your existing clients? Is there a risk to dealing with new people?
it's just a case of judging where that person is, what and what they want to achieve. So with your existing clients, what they've got, what their expectations are. Say when I've had somebody recently leave me a 1-star review because I said, look, this is how I want to tackle this job, and said it's too expensive. So I said, well, and they asked me how much to do half a job. I said the same amount of money, and they started trying to knock me down. Said goodbye, not interested. So they left me a review saying I was rude and arrogant. But I'll take that because it's just a case of, well, that's your opinion, and I've got I had somebody come in for basically the exact same job a week later, and I said, look, this is how I do it, and it goes, and I said, this is what I'm going to charge you, and he goes, oh, that's brilliant, when can you do it, crack on. I actually, because it was the last job of the day, I told him to come right at the end of the day, and I ended up having a good chat with him, and he was actually a dental technician. He says, it's the same for them. Say people want something for nothing, and I said, well, and it's equipment costs more so because that's medical equipment. Our trade has specialist equipment, and as soon as anything is niche market, the price goes up.
It's an interesting one. How did that 1-star review? Did that have a bit of a negative impact, or was it like water off a duck's back?
Well, I was more annoyed about it than anything, but I thought, well, it's just, it's going to happen, and it's a case of it hasn't affected the business any at all, and because the problem is with these Google reviews, they're completely anonymous, and so other people have responded to similar things. Said, say this person's name doesn't match any customer of ours, and so that's the best way to highlight it.
Were you able to respond to that review? Did you get your side across?
Yeah, and then say like they edited that. You can respond to it, but there can't be a conversation. So they basically edited what they'd initially put. So that's all you can do. They can't lock that in, and you can't delete it. So it's a case of, well, it's just the good customers spread the word, the bad customers spread the word to other bad customers. So they're the people you don't want anyway. So I mean,
it's a really good point you make there, Simon, because I think once you get one lower grade client that wants something for nothing and that's pushy, that wants it done in unrealistic time frames, that wants it done in unrealistic price points, if you happen to get one of those and you manage to do that stuff, you've got to live in fear that their friendship group is made up of people just like themselves, and before you know it, they're sending some other person that's like that your way. And as much as Mark said, the virtuous customer that's recommending their friends at the golf club, at the restaurant, at their football clubs, saying you're a good guy. You know, I think I often picture, you know, my B's and C's and D clients actually, if they get through the net, are doing the same, and you'll get more, you know, more of that type of character in your direction. So I think, you know, the right of reply to reviews is awesome. And for me, when I look at anything I buy or do or service, I normally look at the review count. I go, right, they've got a few hundred reviews, looks good. I then sort reviews are bad to good, and I want to see the 1 stars. And all I'm looking at the 1 stars is how the host business responded. And I'll look at the 2 reviews and I'll go, that client looked like a numpty. And sure enough, if you look at the client and chase their other reviews, they're leaving 1-star reviews all over the place for the complete audacity of this garage or this client or this restaurant wanting to charge me for. I read one hilarious one about a woman that got charged for hot water, that was running up and down the wall, that she'd been charged $2.50 for a cup of hot water. She was expecting it for free, and the restaurant owner came back with, we've got to pay the person that bought that cup of water out to you, you know, 11 quid an hour. It costs this much to boil the kettle. It costs that much for the rent and the rates, and it costs this much to put the heating on. What's free in your house that comes out of your tap of your kettle? It isn't free in a business. And I think a lot of clients often run this unrealistic expectation that we're all here as a charity or as a service that is at their benefit, not to work together to win-win to solve a problem and everyone, you getting your car fixed, I'm having a living from it. They've got some unrealistic expectations. So I think the right of review, you know, the right of reply is really powerful. And I, to be honest, you think a garage business, or any business, in fact, with 1-star reviews that have responded, that gives you an insight to that person in that business, not the 5-star reviews. They're almost, you can't tell anything from that. But the 1-star review responses are hugely powerful for the business that was left that review.
Yeah, it kind of humanises the business owner, doesn't it? If you look at those, I do the same thing when I look at all the bad ones and you know, particularly restaurants and stuff.
I think you said before, James, about you know, when a new customer walks in and says, you can quiz them and say, oh, you know, have you come via a recommendation or whatever? And they'll turn around and say, oh, well, I've fallen out with my last 4 garages, and you're thinking, hold on a minute. You know, is this really something I want to get involved in here? You know,
quite. That was the thing that one of the old guys in the trade, we were chatting. Dave Hill is a guy that was big into the forums. He would do that. He would ask a question. He said, "Well, what happened to the relationship with your previous garage?" And the client's response often would give you a view. Yeah, like you say, Mark, would give you a really good view about. Not the other garage necessarily, but the client themselves, how they saw the relationship fail. And, you know, somebody might move into the area, they might be new into the area, and you know they're looking for a new garage, or there might have been a fallout, and there's a genuine reason for it. But I think, for new clients, it's an awfully powerful request or statement. What happened to the person that was previously supplying your garage services? Why aren't you using? Yeah, cool stuff.
As is the digital drive-by that you refer to on some of your trading, you know, the website and everything. That's really powerful, isn't it? To make sure that you've got an online presence that looks professional as well.
Yeah, I've still not got my websites up. It's written.
Me either.
It's written. It's just not published. You know, I say got the domain name. You know, it's just the putting the two together.
Nothing's stopping you now. Look, only work. That's working for getting in the way. Cool stuff. Guys, listen, you're not going to believe it. We've been chatting away here for a good chunk of time. We've covered some good ground, and I'm really grateful for your wisdom and your candour and your time here. As is traditional, when we have come towards the end of the chats, we normally have a little session that talks about magic wishes, magic wand, the magic wand that gives you a couple of wishes if you want them, one on the up swoop and one on the down swoop. If you could change anything, if you could make things different, if you could improve stuff in the garage life, in garage trade, in what you're doing, what sort of things would you wish for? And I'm going to come to you, John, as we started with you in the introduction. Have you got anything that you would magic wish?
Probably regulation of people being able to work on motor vehicles, some kind of regulation, so not just any Tom, Dick or Harry can mess around with them, but I understand that would be difficult to implement, and there are a lot of DIY enthusiasts out there, but probably that, and maybe the people that are in the industry who don't understand what they're doing, maybe just have a little think about what you're doing and get some kind of training, because it's all right messing around with 12-volt systems and not understanding it, but if you're getting onto EVs that are pushing 800 volts out, you're going to hurt yourself or hurt somebody else. And yeah, just really that, be competent and be qualified on what you're working for, and I think that's it really.
It's an awesome one. I think from a garage owner's point of view there, John, what you said, and we can almost add on to the end of that. And if you do, you'll offer your clients a better service. And if you do, you'll end up making more money. And if you do, you'll have a better day-to-day life in your business. And if you do, the people that work for you will love working for you. Do you know, there's so many positives that come from that training and that professionalism and that little uplift. It's not because we want you to do it. I think it's sat this side of the fence. We're going, the benefits to doing it are awesome. Do it because of all those positive reasons. And regulation is a bit of a double-edged sword, isn't it? Because if the government are going to get involved, unfortunately, the clowns in charge of the circus don't really understand the detail of the trade, and they're likely to make it not great. It's going to be, designed by committee, and we're going to have to suffer it. Self-regulation would be awesome, but it's tricky. But professionalism, I love that, John. Professionalism. Mark, what about your swoop of your magic wand over there in Cardiff? You're gonna put some Welsh wizardry onto this magic witches. What will it be?
I just think, obviously, a better understanding from the customer's point of view of what is actually involved in our trade, the struggles we face as independents, getting the information, keeping up with the fast-paced moving, the transport industry, vehicles as a whole. I mean, the customer are asking for these driver comforts and these driver aids, and they're moaning about when they go wrong. But they're driving the industry to, you used to put a key in a lock. You don't no more. You used to press a button to open a door. You don't no more. You just walk up and it's keyless entry. The thing is, when these things are going wrong and they've got to pay, and the customer's actually having to shell out their money, they're not understanding that they're the ones that are asking for this. So just a better understanding, just to see our trade valued a bit more, basically. Yeah. That'd be what I'd like in the future.
Yeah, that's an awesome. That's a great wish. I think I would probably add a little bit to that, going, and realise the garage are doing this for your benefit, that they want you to have reliable transport. They want you to have your problem fixed and solved. They want you to have trouble-free motoring. I think sometimes clients see garages as being a rip-off, and they're doing them wrong. I don't know anyone in my circle of contacts that work in garages. Everyone that fixes cars for a living is doing so to make sure that man, that lady, their kids, and their family are safe in their transport. They can get from where they're going to go. It's reliable, and it's giving them no aggro. And I would sort of underline what you said there. Wouldn't it be lovely if people that drove cars realised that people that work in garages want them to see them safe and reliable?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's not.
Yeah, there's not many garage owners. There's not many garage owners driving around in Lamborghinis. That's for sure.
No. I'll never be a millionaire, but I'm happy doing what I do because I still enjoy it.
Yeah, and that's it. You know, it's a happy life. You know, and there's a lot to be said for that. Absolutely, satisfaction in the job. So Simon,
100%.
Simon, your magic, your wand whooshing up there in Bury. What sort of Manchester magic are you going to tell us?
So for us, we need better service information. I mean, like say, the best thing, you know, say with, you know, it's been said multiple times this evening to in order to fix something, you've got to know how it works. Certain manufacturers are very good at system descriptions, fault setting criteria, and others are completely useless. You know, you get a fault code, it doesn't explain how and why that fault code is set. It doesn't tell you what the system's looking for. So, you know, we've got the benefit of fundamental knowledge through training, so we can get and combining that with experience, you know, we start to learn what's good, what's bad. But you know, it would certainly help if manufacturers would give that information. I mean, you look on some manufacturers, you've got nice waveforms to look at. You've got, you know, typical limit values. Others, you've just got nothing. And you know,
I think maybe that's where legislation could come in, Simon, where we almost would go, do you know what? If you're releasing a car into the market and you're expecting it to be maintained outside of the warranty period, you as a car manufacturer have to commit to giving information that's going to help independent technicians maintain and fix and repair that. You know, some of the manufacturers we talk about, one of my own personal favorites is the way that the Stellantis group give, you know, all of that fault setting criteria, fault enabling criteria, drive cycles, patterns of behavior, interlinking, you know, malfunctions and failure modes. You know, I think somewhere something's gone missing where the government or the legislators that allow cars to launch to the market should say the basic standard of information, you know, ought to be like you've just described there, Simon, to give us a fighting chance of helping our customers maintain reliable modes of transport.
Yeah.
It's not in their interest to do that, though, is it?
Well, you look saying that, John. You look sometimes at the lead time that it takes to get a car into the dealer, and they're, because of the technician shortage and the crisis, they can't offer a decent level of service to their own clients whilst they're under warranty. You know, what chance do they have if suddenly, you know, that they're looking after cars that are 4 and 5 years old? I don't think they're doing it to try and keep that business in house. I think something's missing somewhere from being fair and reasonable with the information. As Simon said, we all know what we need to fix these things. It's not in their interest, which is probably why they need a little bit of a nudge from the legislators. Yeah, cool stuff. Listen, chaps, it's been an immense pleasure to spend the evening with you. I really appreciate you giving up your time, coming on and chewing the cud. I'm looking forward to us hopefully doing this again. It's been really, really useful. Thanks for your insight, your honesty and your candor. Hopefully what we've done there is shone a bit of a light on some of those topics and subjects. I know they're dear to all your hearts, and it just remains for me to thank you very much for coming on and sharing your stories and your views. Really, really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
And thank you, James. I've enjoyed it. Yeah, thank you, James.
Anytime.
For putting it all together.
Anytime.